Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and a couple of cards for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. Like I always do, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. In the blog post, I'll have a link to the Color Throwdown Challenge. On the Color Throwdown Challenge blog, there is info in the sidebar for those that are new or just curious about playing along, because it is open to everyone. We do it, it's just for fun, just to start thinking outside the box in terms of color. It's worth checking out just to get some inspiration, whether you want to play along or not. And yeah, very fall colors for this week. So I pulled out a layering stencil set. I got a little mixy with some different picket fence paper glazes to get the color I wanted. So I just started blending 3 different colors together. Why not? So yeah, Oxide inks and layering stencils. I did some hot foiling, all the things. I did all the things. Why not? So yeah, if you keep watching, I will show you guys how I made these cards. So the first thing I did was I stamped panels of Simon Says Stamps cream cardstock with the thank you text background stamp and some fossil ink. But I didn't film that. But I turned my camera on to film me cleaning the stamp and doing a bunch of other mindless things, because yep. I've shown it in a bunch of videos though. Just stamp the backgrounds with the fossil ink, which is a non-water reactive ink. This ink, I'm pretty sure they're going to retire it. I don't even have a link to it other than in a combo bundle, but any just sort of neutral shade of ink will work. It just gives that little extra something to the background. And then the stencil set I'm using is the Autumn Cascade stencil set. And it's a set of 2 stencils. And this sort of main layer, I did spray the back of the stencil with a bit of PIXIE spray, because there's a couple areas that have very kind of delicate little parts to them. So I sprayed them with PIXIE spray, which is, removable, all that. And that just helped hold everything into place. And then I also used my Picket Fence Studios paper pouncers with my Distress Oxide inks, because that way you're just pouncing the ink on, up and down. I'm not moving like you do with a brush. And the Oxide inks I chose were Fired Brick, Vintage Photo, and Forest Moss. And I'm using 2 of my Waffle Flower grip mats just so I can do what will be the card front and what will be the card inside at the same time. Just a convenience thing. And I did the card front first with the inks and the pouncer, full strength. And then the panel that'll go on the inside, I put the stencil on top of it, and I don't re-ink my pouncers. I just use whatever little bit of ink is left on them and the stencil, so that I get a very much lighter version on the second panel, because it's going to go on the inside and I want to be able to write over that with a pen. So did all of that. And then for the detail or like spines of the leaves, this stencil, I just had a random color in my head. I could have just used I started with, this is Brown Dahlia paper glaze, and I should have shown it on camera. It's gorgeous. It's this really deep, dark brown with almost like a bronzy reflex to it, but I wanted to lighten it. So I used that with Snowdrop white paper glaze, and you can see I'm mixing it up on my palette. And then I also added Golden Rose, and Golden Rose is gorgeous too. I pulled that out and I was like, ooh, I could use just this, because it's the perfect shade of warm gold. But I was in a mixing mood, so that's what I did. I just stuck it on a palette and mixed. And I was once I got to this shade here that was a bit more, it ends up looking kind of antique bronze sort of, So I had fun. It was fun mixing. And when you do things like this, if you have a bunch of excess, you could just stick it in a little container, something that seals up real good, and save it for future projects. Thankfully, I pretty much made just enough for both of these cards with my mucking around. There wasn't even enough left over to do a third if I'd wanted. So sometimes I'm good at that. Other times, not so much. So I just applied the stencil over the background. and then applied my Franken mix over top with my palette knife. And then once I was done, I took my stencil, my little palette, my palette knife, and just washed it with just some warm soapy water, and everything's good to go. And then I just needed to let those backgrounds dry. So while they were drying, I went through all my glimmer hot foils. These are Spellbinders glimmer hot foils, and this was pure accident. Their pewter shade of foil is like an exact match with my Franken mix of paper glaze paste that I did. I love when I, accidentally, randomly find, perfect little matches here and there in my stash. And I was just like, oh. And I also had 2 rolls of this stuff. I don't know why, but probably just in my quest to have every single color of glimmer hot foil, I, ordered doubles of some of them. So whatever. Anyway, for me and glimmer hot foil, my little system is I cut the foil pretty close to the size of whatever hot foil plates I'm using. And I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Fancy Giving Thanks hot foils, or hot foil plates. So one says thankful, one says grateful. And I take the glimmer hot foil and I tape it to the cardstock I'm using with little bits of the Spellbinders tape. And then I also tape the plates into place too. And you have the glimmer hot foil, you have the pretty side facing up, the ugly side faces the paper. And then the plates, you have the nice side of the plate against the pretty side of the foil. And then my glimmer hot foil machine was already heated up. Stuck them on there with the hot foil plates touching the glimmer hot foil machine. Press the timer button. Takes about a minute to heat up. Once that bottom green light went solid, I slowly run the whole thing through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine. And then I remove the plate and the foil, and I got perfect results. So whether or not me taping, like taking the extra couple of minutes to tape everything in place actually makes a difference, in my head, I believe it does. So that's what I'm sticking with. So after I hot foiled these, I used the outline dies from the Fancy Giving Thanks die set. So if you don't want to hot foil or get into hot foil, you could skip that and just use, because the Fancy Giving Thanks die set has the words as well, and I've used those in previous videos. Has the words and the outlines, and they're the same size. So I use the outlines to die cut out these hot foil sentiments. And then my backgrounds are now dry. So I used my guillotine trimmer to trim all of these down to about 4 inches by 5 1/4. Basically, I just trimmed all the panels down to be smaller than what my A2 card bases will be. So trimmed everything down, and then for the 2 panels that are going to be on the front of the card, I pulled out Vintage Photo Distress ink. And I've shown this in a lot of videos, and I'll keep showing it in videos. I have the Ranger mini blending foams, or the round blending foams, and I keep them in the bottoms of my Distress inks, because I have one for every single color, and they just fit perfectly in the bottoms of the Distress ink cubes. And I use that with the Vintage Photo ink to just blend all around the edges of those panels, just to warm them up a bit, give it that little extra something something. And then I pulled out some scraps of Nina Desert Storm cardstock, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment from the Thankful and Grateful stamp set. And I just put the stamp onto an acrylic block, and I inked it up with that Fired Brick Distress Oxide ink, and then just stamped it onto these scraps of cardstock. And then I'm going to use Simon's Sentiment Label wafer dies, the smallest ones. And I have 2 of every size because I've bought like an extra set because I use these so much. It just saves me time. That's all. That's the only reason I have extras. So tape those into place and then ran those through my die cut machine. So making sure again that I got them lined up and straight, taped them with washi tape. And then my card bases, I do not have a link to this cardstock. This is old. It was MFT Fired Brick. I'm 99% positive. So it doesn't even exist anymore. But yeah. Desert Storm was originally going to be what I was going to use, because like I use Desert Storm cardstock for everything. So that would have been a great alternative. But I was like, ooh, this color works great for this combo and these cards. So that's what I used. And again, top folding A2 sized note cards. I adhered the insides with craft tacky glue. I adhered the card fronts with craft tacky glue. My hot foiled sentiments, I'm going to pop these up with some thin foam squares just to give them a little bit of dimension. So pop those into place with the foam square. And then for the little sentiment strips that I had stamped and die cut, those I'm just going to adhere with the craft tacky glue. And I'm going to kind of like shimmy them just slightly underneath both of these sentiments. So put the glue into place and then just kind of zhuzh them up there underneath the little bottom parts of those sentiments. And then once I was happy with that, just pressed them down into place. And then I went through my stash again and I pulled out First Sprout Confetti. This is from Trinity Stamps. And like always, I'll have links to everything but that cardstock for the card bases in the description box below the video. Sprinkled those kind of around this sort of swag of the background I created. And then once I was kind of happy with the placement, then I can adhere these into place with just dabs of craft tacky glue. So I can just pick them up with my little embellishment wand, put down a dab of glue, press into place, and that's it. So get those all into place, and then I just got to let the glue dry, and these cards are complete. So really the only thing I didn't do on these was splatter. I know. I thought about it. Trust me, I think about it every single time. But I wanted the hot foiling and then the stenciling and everything to stand out a little bit more. But splatter would have been good too. But anyway, as always, like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have a link below the video to my blog post. In the blog post will be a link to the Color Throwdown Challenge. I'll have a supply list with links to all of the supplies I used. So you can check that out in the description box below the video if you're interested. You just got to expand the description box and all that info will be there. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting. Subscribe if you haven't. I would love to have you. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.